This segment of the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast is supported in part by Douglas Outdoors, serious rods for serious anglers. Go to douglasoutdoors.com and check out their new lineup of Era rods that retail under $100. Norsk Lithium, the lithium battery that you need is just a click away. Go to norsklithium.com and check out some of the lightest lithium batteries in the market with the best warranty in the business. Mariner Sales. Located in the heart of the DFW Metroplex, Mariner Sales has the largest inventory of kayak and kayak accessories in North Texas. You can also shop online at marinersales.com. What is going on, everyone? Hope you are having a great evening. Once again to the Real Life on the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast. As always, it's your boy Armando. Let me fix my camera here. I don't know if it's straight or not, but looks like it's crooked. So we're gonna have a great episode for you today. I'm super excited about this episode because it's a topic that I think I struggle with. I don't know a lot about, and I would would love to know more about, and that is scouting and pre-fishing. We're gonna go in depth on that topic. And with me today, it's gonna be Jett, a great angler from the Tennessee area. He's won multiple local tournaments. He's done great in national trails, and he has a very interesting, in-depth way of like scouting and pre-fishing a lake, and obviously it has worked for him. So he's kind enough to come up to the podcast and share some of what he does to help him prepare for a tournament. So if you love tournaments, or even if you don't, if you just want to get good at kayak bass fishing, this is going to be a great episode. Maybe you are, trying new bodies of water and you want to get the best of it. So preparing, like if we're going to the tournament, it also kind of helps. So whether you're a tournament angler or whether you just love kayak bass fishing for fun, this is going to be a great episode. So if you have any questions, we're here to take questions. Please put it on the comment section. You can ask any questions when you get into the subject. Again, it's going to be scouting using Google Maps, Navionics, and then actually how to apply what you found through scouting using the technology that we have, the internet and apps and all that, and then moving that information into pre-fishing to eventually make a decision on what you are going to fish on tournament day. Obviously, not everything is going to work, but it's a good way to kind of like break things down, and you can save time of pre-fishing and tournament fishing by just doing the little things at home and preparing for that. So anyways, that's what we're going to touch on. Without further ado, let's bring our guest for today, Jett. Buddy, how are you doing today, man? Thanks for coming up to the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a fun few years, and I'm happy to be on here.
How long have you done kayak bass fishing, Ethan?
Let's see. When I first started kayak bass fishing with my best friend, Tristan Underwood, it was my freshman year of high school. I graduated in 2017, so around 2014, 2013. And I did not start competing in tournaments until about 2017 and 2018. So I've been around it relatively kind of new.
And how much success have you found? Are you happy with what the success you found since you started doing tournaments?
Oh, I'm thrilled. I finished the very first year I ever fished in the Hobie Bass Open. I finished second place on Chickamauga, and then I went and fished, qualified for the Tournament of Champions, and I failed miserably. I finished like second from last. So, even with all the pre-fishing and preparation for a tournament, you're never guaranteed success.
Yeah.
And then in 2023, I am the Tennessee Bass Nation champion for the Tennessee Bass Nation Kayak Series. So that's been my biggest accomplishment to date.
That's pretty big, because when I think of like states that hold the most talent for bass fishing and kayak bass fishing, there's two states that come to mind. Obviously, here in Texas, we got a
Yeah.
bunch of great anglers. Texas, like I've said before in this podcast, I consider it like the mecca of bass fishing. Not because I live in Texas, but just, I mean, in reality, I mean, I know there's some great fisheries up north, especially for smallmouth bass and spotted bass and shoal bass and all that. But as far as largemouth bass, I mean, it's hard to beat. Florida has, great
Yeah.
bass fishing as well, huge um, bass and a lot of them. But as far as the talent field, I think Texas and Tennessee. Like
Yeah.
when you look at all the great anglers that you have over there, Jordan Marshall, or at least in that area. I don't know if every one of the ones that I'm going to mention are necessarily in Tennessee, but Jordan Marshall, you and
Yeah.
Miner, yourself. I mean, there's the list goes on and on.
Now,
So for you to win the Tennessee Bass Nation Championship, that's big. I mean, that is a loaded
yeah,
field with talent.
I was very fortunate and lucky. And it was on Gunnersville, and I love Gunnersville. It's my favorite lake to fish. Some giant bass, and it can be kind of hard because there's a lot of grass. You will not probably 5 out of 3 casts you make, you'll be trashed because of all the grass. But that's kind of my strength, and I love fishing down there. And I was just very fortunate enough to win, beat out all those great anglers. You got some of the biggest names like Adam Reiser, Russ Snyder,
Yep.
Christine Fisher lives in Tennessee now.
Yep.
So and like you were talking about, Texas being a big bass capital, Tennessee, we have largemouth and we have the state or the world record lake for a smallmouth fish, all in
Dale Hollow,
Tennessee.
right?
Yes, sir. Yep, Dale Hollow Lake. So it's really you got some of the best fishing at Chickamauga, used to be Kentucky Lake. It's just a fun place to live. And the nice thing about tournament fishing in Tennessee, you're centrally located to all across the country. So,
Yes. Yeah, no, definitely. Tennessee is definitely one of the best kayak bass fishery states that
yeah.
here in in the lower 48, and it's amazing the talent over there. So let's talk about, well, first of all, you mentioned something about your line of work that kind of helps you in preparing for pre-fishing. What is it that you do for work, and how does that help you with preparing for fishing tournaments?
Well, I'm actually working for myself now, but previously I was an engineer at a high pressure die casting plant, and I was an engineer at a small little kayak fishing, um, recreational fishing leash manufacturer, and I was partially the reason why I like to pre-fish, and the system that I use goes along with the lines that I love looking at data, love looking at numbers. And so I use a lot of Excel spreadsheets to log down information, to put waypoints. And it's kind of chaotic if you were not me to look at it, but it's a very simple way for my mind to think, and I can put it all in one um, place to be able to make sense of it when it comes to tournament preparation. So if you're an engineer, you'll kind of understand my thought process of all the analytical thinking, and it can get kind of overwhelming if you're not that kind of mindset.
So when let's start from the beginning as far as how do you prepare for uh a tournament. You mentioned to me before when we were talking brainstorming about the idea of this
Yeah.
podcast um about scouting. What is it that you do on scouting, and how do you translate that information into a spreadsheet? Because I find that fascinating. I never knew a spreadsheet would help in bass fishing,
Yeah.
but here we are.
So, you get all this information from YouTube channels, from Bassmaster websites, and it's all just out there. And the reason why I've always used Excel spreadsheets is I can take all that information and figure out what my strengths are far as my fishing techniques, and I can kind of zone down what I like to do, and then I can use the Excel spreadsheet to just gather all that information, put it in one place, and be able to cleanly look. And then I can go and start looking at Google Maps, figuring out what areas of the lake has areas that I like. Example, like boat docks. I love fishing boat docks. So I'll start looking at places that have a lot of boat docks. But usually going back to the beginning, my scouting usually starts as soon as the schedule is released. Like Bassmaster, they release their schedule, I think in like early January, maybe even before Christmas. I can't remember when they released it. But I started taking the tournaments that I planned on fishing, and I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I've started logging every boat ramp down. And then I'll go on Google Maps and I start looking at each boat ramp and looking to see what all's around that area. And I try, now kind of jumping to the pre-fishing, I don't really want to jump that far, but I try to find places that have multiple techniques that you can fish. So, but it's just a way that I can take a lot of information out there and with my information and kind of pull it all together and put it in an Excel spreadsheet.
Well, so what is it, the data that you're actually putting there? When I look at this, if I were to look at your Excel spreadsheet,
Yeah.
what is it that I'm looking at?
So I'll have it listed as boat ramps. I'll put all the boat ramps in, and then I'll put kind of like the habitat around that. Example, like boat docks, grass, standing timber, any kind of like points. I'll put each kind of area. I'll put the boat ramp will be an area, like a radius, if you will, of an area. And then I'll actually go in there. And if I have previous knowledge of a lake, I'll go in there and actually put where I've been in the past and where I've caught fish and how big they are, and just the data from every catch I catch. Every fish I catch, I keep the size, water temp, where I caught it in. If I have the time, I even go into biometric pressure and wind direction.
Really? And you put out all that in your spreadsheet?
Yes, yeah. It gets kind of big. I have to every season start a new one.
Oh, so you do that every season?
Yeah. I got it all the way dating back to 2022.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you look at what the first thing you do is you said you go to Google Maps. Now, are you like most people that go into like, I don't know if you can do it on Google Maps. I think you actually have to do it on the Google Earth app where you can change the dates on it, and then you can see like how the lake looked during a certain time where it might have been a drought, and then you can see more of the bottom.
Yeah.
Do you do that as well?
I do. Yeah. I'll go in there and find when the winter drawdown is, if they draw it down. If they don't, I'll just look back throughout the year. And like at Guntersville, for an example, because I have a lot of history down there, you can go in there and look to see where how far the grass went out, like what areas had the most grass. And every year it changes. And so that kind of gets to where people go and fish history. That's why history can bite you in the butt, because the lake is ever changing from year to year. It will never be the same. So using Google Map or Google Earth, being able to change from year to year, it can be very valuable as far as scouting an area.
And then we got a few questions here. It says, Lawrence Martinez says, how much should you have to pay for that Excel sheet? Do you actually sell those? Like, I know there's some people that sell their waypoints.
I do not, but I think I might need to.
Lauren says Ethan sounds like OCD Virgo. now I want to know when is your birthday? So it has to be September. Is it September?
No, it's not. It's actually March.
March. I don't know what zodiac sign that
I'm a
is.
Pisces.
There you go. So,
Yeah.
oh yeah, so there you go, Pisces. I don't believe in any of that, but Pisces, I think that's the two fish
Yeah,
symbol.
yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
That
That
might
makes
that
sense.
might be why I've done good in fishing. I don't know.
Maybe it has to do something with it. It says, Andrew Thomas Leonard says, "What's your favorite part of Kentucky? Lake, North, Mid, or South?"
Ooh, that's a good one. Probably the Mid Lake. I like that around that Paris, the bridge area. I can't remember what it's the boat ramp name, but the Paris Landing around that area. I'm not a huge, to be honest, completely honest. I'm not a huge Kentucky Lake guy. I'm a Barkley Lake. So if we get a chance to fish Kentucky or Barkley, I'm always on Barkley.
So you put all that information once you get all that information on your spreadsheet, then how do you decide? What do you? I guess it varies on the type of lake that you're fishing. Like a
Yeah.
highland reservoir, which has a lot of like rocks and almost no grass. Obviously, that's going to change your approach to it versus Guntersville, which is a great, very grassy lake. So, what is it? Like, say, for example, like a lake that is famous for having a lot of grass. What is it when you look at your Excel spreadsheet? What is the first thing that you look up, and how does that help you decide where you're gonna uh, pre-fish for the tournament?
So usually I will just have it all in the Excel spreadsheet, and then I'll start looking at boat ramps that have multiple structures, kind of like boat docks with grass, laydowns with grass. So if I can find one boat dock that has a bunch of different um, techniques of fishing or ledges and stuff, like all um, the different habitat that you're
Yeah.
trying to target. That's what I try to look for in the very first ramp that I go to in pre-fishing. The reason behind that, we're in a kayak. We can't start that 250 behind us and run 2 or 3 miles down the lake to another area. So if I can find one spot that has a multitude of different styles of fishing, I can go and hit each one of those and figure out what I'm catching fish and what I'm not catching fish. And then the reason why I have the Excel spreadsheet, when I get back on day one of pre-fishing, I can go in my Excel spreadsheet and click the sorting button, and I can sort out everything that I did not catch fish on. And then, bam, the rest of the ramps that I have are ramps that have the same structure that I was catching fish on. So then I don't have to go back and look over Google Maps and look over the whole lake. I can just look at my Excel spreadsheet and I can say, oh, I want that ramp has everything I caught fish at. So I can hit that waypoint. I can open it up on Google Earth and I can go to it on day one or day two of pre fishing. And if I can catch fish there, then I have a pattern.
So I'm trying to picture it because I know I am not nearly as smart as you are, Ethan. So
Oh,
I'm trying to dumb it down for myself here. So you on the spreadsheet, you're gonna load, everything structure, boat ramps, and there's grass, there's a deep ledge,
yeah.
there's a rock pile, there's this, there's that. Anything that you can find on Google Earth. Do you use anything other than Google Earth to load on the Excel spreadsheet? Do you use other types of application or just Google Earth?
I'll usually just use Google Earth because it's the easiest to add labels to stuff, and you can actually make maps if you have if you have an account through Google, so you can actually make different maps per different lake. So I can actually go in Google Maps and figure out what lake I'm going to, and then I can actually make a map of that lake with all my labels. And if you have a question, it's the same thing what Steve Owens with Bassmaster, he does the same thing, but he's adding approved launch sites.
Mm.
So it's basically the same map that Steve has, but I'm taking it and using it and actually adding more labels to my map with different structures. And then I can take that label with that waypoint, with them coordinates, and I can link it to my Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, so you actually using like Google Earth in an interactive way.
Yes, yeah,
And then you're able to link that, upload it, one click of a button to your Excel spreadsheet.
yes, yeah.
Oh, I see. I
I'll
see.
I had a piece of paper. So I'll actually have the ramp name, and then off to the side, I'll have like structure of that ramp around that area. And then dash, I'll have the coordinates to that ramp and to that structure. And all I got to do is click it, and it opens up the Google Maps through the internet.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've done the Google Earth where I look for, same thing, either grass, rock piles, and then mark the waypoints, upload it to a website where I transfer it to the format that I can then upload it to my Garmin fish finder.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you do that as well, or does your so when you're on the water, you have an Excel like the spreadsheet. Is it on your phone or is it on your fish finder?
It's usually on my laptop,
Okay.
but I'll actually go in there and depending on where I've decided to go for the day of pre-fishing, I'll go in there and actually add waypoints either on my phone, the Active Captain app with Garmin, or I'll actually go to my kayak and add it to the graph manually. So it's not the perfect system. It don't automatically update it to the graph, but it's something that in the South we call it piddling, and I just like to piddle away sometimes. So
Okay, so you get all that information. Now you based on that information, you decide where you're gonna go pre-fish, right? Day
yeah,
one.
yeah,
So I know you mentioned it, but I'm kind of trying to put it in a chronological order. You got the
yeah,
information that you were looking for on Google Earth. You uploaded it to your Google Earth account. You tied it to your Excel spreadsheet. You have that information now. You decide where you want to go. You pick the boat ramp. You start fishing the boat ramp. What is it? What's in the next step?
So the next step would be to start targeting different techniques and different structure habitat, just trying to find where they're located. So take it an example. You start at a cove. You leave the boat ramp, go to the entrance of a big cove, and this cove can be a mile long, whatever. I'll start at the very beginning of the cove and check to see where the fish are located. So you can either check the points at the very beginning, and you can work back, hit the docks, lay downs, and then once I catch some fish, then I'll mentally note. I might even put it on my phone, and I'll always mark it on my depth finder as well. That way I can go back and look at all the fish catches where I've caught them at, which I don't always mean that you'll catch them there tomorrow. So that's just a disclaimer there. But I'll start in, and then most of the time, once you're pre-fishing or once you're fishing and you find where they're located, you can just work your way back until you stop catching them, and then you can work your way back out to the main lake, and you can figure out a lot about where they're located. And depending on where they're located, that tells you a lot about where they're at in the spawn and the cycle of their life too. If they're spawning, pre-spawning. So I look at it, how I look at it, I look at it a very analytical way. And then a lot of people.
Yeah, it's interesting. So one, you go there, you fish, you pre-fish day one, and where you caught fish and what time of day. You mentioned something about water temperatures, barometric oh my god, pressure,
Yeah.
um all that you now upload it once again to your spreadsheet.
Yeah. When I get home, I'll sit there, and it's either when I get back to the Airbnb hotel, I'll either sit there and do it, or I'll wait till the end of the tournament. If I'm only planning on being there for that tournament, I'll do it at the end of the day. A lot of this goes back to my hunting. like I love deer hunting, and and I have an Excel spreadsheet with all my deer on it, because a lot of times they will change their patterns as well. So I
Yeah.
took information. That's actually what I first did it with, and then I took that spreadsheet and made it into fishing. And it's really it. I'm a I like seeing the patterns, and that's why I started doing it.
It's like I feel like I'm watching that movie from Russell Crowe, like Beautiful Mind.
Oh,
Have you ever watched that movie?
I have. You
All
think
right, we get
I'm
got
smart? It's
the what
probably
now? I interrupted you. I'm sorry. What was that again?
I said I sound smart, but it's probably more insanity than anything, really.
Well, I mean, you're an engineer. Like you're
Yeah.
smart. Like if you're an engineer, you're pretty smart. Walter Hansen says, wondering if you do this as well. But when lakes are in a winter pool, I think you touched on that. I often mark waypoint structures as I am fishing that otherwise would be underwater at normal pool and then export them to my spreadsheet. I think you mentioned that, right? You do that as well?
I was
Winter
actually
drawdowns?
do I?
The winter drawdowns?
Yes, I was actually at Percy Priest Sunday for my 2-year anniversary of my YouTube channel, and that's what I did after I got done with my live stream. I sat there all afternoon, running all over the lake, and looking at different shore structures and marking them on my waypoints. And that's what I do all winter on my local lakes. I know a lot of times, like with the national trails, we only go to these lakes once or twice, and so it don't really you can't really get out there and do that during the summer or during the winter drawdown. But my local lakes, you should see my GPS, my graph. It's full of waypoints.
So speaking of the devil, Steve Owens is on the chat. You mentioned that says Tennessee Hammer. You mentioned that like Steve Owens, when he does the boat ramp selection, he shares it. He shares the link so you'll know which boat ramps you can do. Like, would you be able to like all that the same thing he did? Like share the like, hey, you just hit the link, it opens Google Map and it shows you where the boat ramp is. If you were to make upload into that into Google Earth, could you make a link that you can share with somebody and says, hey, this is everything that I found with all the data that you already have?
I could probably figure out a way. It might take me a little while, but I could probably figure it out. I've never done it before, but
And how much would that cost? Let's talk business here.
I
I
mean,
mean, I'm pretty sure you can make a lucrative business doing that. Like, hey, what lake do you have a tournament? I have a tournament at Bodark. All right, I'm gonna do that. I actually, there's somebody that there's used to be. I don't know if it still is. I haven't watched it for a long time. Simplistic Fishing, I think, used to have the name of that
yeah,
YouTube channel where the guy would actually he would break down a lake using Google Maps, mark all the waypoints, and then you can actually go into his website and either purchase the SD card with that all the waypoints that he marked on that YouTube channel,
yeah,
or you can just buy it and the web version of it. He'll send you the file via email and upload it to your Garmin.
yeah. I think he does that, and then the is it Fish the Moment? I think he does the same.
Oh, he does the same thing. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I haven't watched Fish the Moments channel in a minute.
Now, going back to what you asked, we might want to ask Steve-O, is that legal in a tournament?
Let's block Steve-O from this chart
Yeah.
right now. Hold on. Well, I'm assuming you can't do it
Well, I'm not a
once
guy.
practice. I don't know. Steve-O, if you're there, comment.
Yeah.
Can you do it and how far in advance can you do it? When's the cutoff where you can't do that anymore?
Yeah, because I know with Bassmasters, they have a lot of info sharing rules. So that might be a great.
I know it used to be, I can't remember because the rules have changed so much. And then you have the Hobie BOS had a certain set of rules. KB had a certain set of rules, and then Bassmaster has a different set of rules about that. And I know like it was like 3 weeks away. Like once that like 3 weeks before the tournament started, that you that was off limits. That was
Yeah,
not just off limits for the water. It was off limits to look for information, to purchase information or get private information on it. And then, but I don't know if that's still the same thing. It probably is, or at least
yeah.
maybe it's just gotten a little bit tighter.
I know Steve O and AJ, they actually sat down, I think it was last year at the beginning of the season, and really like talked about their roles and tried to get them aligned better. So that's not such a big difference
Yeah,
when you put a different trails.
I I think that was in 2023. At the when Steve Owens took over the Bassmaster Kayak Series full time.
Yeah. Yeah, it was because I
Yeah,
fished Awesome Kingdom event to just celebrate Steve O fishing or starting that. He's a good friend of mine, so
great dude, great dude. I didn't see you on. Did I see you on Possum Kingdom? I know I fished it. How did you did on Possum Kingdom, by the way?
I did terrible.
Yeah, it was bad.
I caught 3 or 4 fish on day one, and I caught like I think 4 fish on day two.
Oh, you did the 2-day one.
Yeah, the Bassmaster on Possum Kingdom in 2023.
Oh yeah, 2024 was they did went back to it. And that's the one that got day one was canceled.
Okay, yeah, I didn't do that one. No,
All right.
yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
So you upload all that info. So now let's go back to where we were.
yeah,
You finished day one pre-fishing. You upload your catches, where you found success, where you got skunk, into the spreadsheet. And then you mentioned something that spreadsheet has a way that you can program it so it'll tell you, all right, what you found here, according to the information that you uploaded, you may be able to duplicate on this ramp, and this ramp. Is that correct?
yes, that is. With Excel, if you're gonna do that, you can go in there and sort out different keywords. Now the problem with it, you gotta make sure you spell it the same, even capitalize everything the
Oh,
same.
I'm done with that. That's you
Yeah.
lost me there.
So the nice thing about Excel, and I wish I could show it, you can actually there's a little bitty plus sign on the very bottom of the Excel, the blocks. You can copy and bring it down. So it makes it a little easier doing that. And really it sounds like it's a lot, and it's a lot to get started. I'm not gonna lie about it. But once you have the actual template, it's really simple. You just kind of click and add stuff, and it don't it sounds like I probably sit there all day and do it, but it takes me like 20 minutes once I have the template.
It'll probably take me 2 months with the template.
But I'll go in there and I'll sort them out. Like say that my structure tab, you'll have like grass, then slash docks, and then the next block you'll have like grass slash laydowns, and then next block have ledge, and next block blah blah blah. So I can actually go in there, and if I caught them on grass docks, I can go and click the drop down on grass docks, and it'll show me all the ramps that I've looked at that has grass docks on it, and then so forth. I can go in there, and it makes it a lot easier because
Yeah, especially on a new lake, I would imagine.
yeah, like Gunnersville. I'm looking at the map right here. You got so many different ramps and so many different habitats, different structures, and it can be if you're not using something to log all of it, you can forget about a ramp up the river that
Yeah.
could be having 20-inch fish that the winner could be out of, but you forgot about it on tournament day because you didn't have it all listed. So that's why I do it. It's just to instead of having to remember 500 ramps on a lake, I can just remember where I'm catching fish at, and then I can go in there and look at all the ramps that have that.
So how often do you say, okay, you pick the lake, you pick the spot, you pick the boat ramp, you uploaded all that information. Now it tells you where you can theoretically duplicate that in other boat ramps. How often have you gone to another boat ramp and actually been able to duplicate? In other words, how successful has it been for you in, to say, okay, as far as the information that I uploaded on the Excel spreadsheet, um this should work on this part of the lake and this boat ramp and so on and so forth. How many times have you actually done that and realized, oh, it actually did work?
I do it all the time, to be honest. It almost surprises you once you have gone to multiple different ramps with all the same structures, that it correlates so well for all over the lake. It's and it really shows, like you watch the Bassmaster Elite Series, they're starting their motor up and making a milk run, fishing another spot that looks a lot like what they're fishing at before, and they catch fish there too. And so it all correlates. And I've used that app. I've used my spreadsheet a lot, and it's been successful in a lot of ways.
Timothy Joseph says, are you marking your catches, or are you also marking structures? Do you also mark ditches, humps, and grass? So yeah, let's talk about that. What is it that you kind of touched on it, but what do you mark? What's all the information that you upload into an Excel spreadsheet? Like, tell us everything that goes into it.
So the Excel spreadsheet only has like the structure name, but then on my Google Maps, I'll be marking
Okay.
ditches, humps, grass areas. So if you could look at my Google Maps, and if I open up a map that I've made, there's labels all over the map. And then I can go in there and look at different areas. Let's say in a kayak with my Newport NK180 with the 100 or 60 amp hour Dakota lithium, I can get about 13 miles both ways. So about 6 miles, 6.5, I can go a radius of that boat round, and I can fish different structures, different humps. So that's what I'll do at different boat rounds. I'll look at different, like I won't really draw a circle, but I'll look around and I'll try to map exactly how far away. So that way I can just be more efficient on the water, use my equipment, my motor, instead of traveling by truck everywhere. But then also, if I know it's further than 13 miles ish, I can get in the truck and drive off. But I'll use Google Maps a lot. They both are in unison to get the question.
Man, that's interesting. So when you are out there, actually, when you're out pre-fishing, you take your laptop with you?
No, I do not. I'll just make a note either on my phone notes or like on my depth finder. The Garmin has the active captain app.
Yeah.
My phone, and I can mark different waypoints by the symbols, like if there's a great, and then I can go back once I get home or once I get to the Airbnb hotel. I can look on my phone on the active captain app on the Navionics, and then I can go back, put it in my Google Maps, and then if I liked it and caught fish, then I'll add it to my Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, interesting.
Or vice
Sounds
versa.
tedious though. Like,
it can.
So you go from marking it on. So there's kind of like a twofold. Well, kind of threefold. There's Google Maps. You uploaded a pre-fishing before you even get on the water. Upload it to your spreadsheet. Actually put it in practice. Day one pre-fishing. Finish pre-fishing. While you're pre-fishing, you're marking your Garmin with everything that you find. You get home, you open your Garmin app, and you upload what you found, what you marked on the water to Google Earth, and then if you like it, move it all the way to your spreadsheet.
Yeah. And that only happens if I actually catch fish. So it only goes on my spreadsheet if I'm actually catching fish in that area. So then I can go in there and delete other areas then, or I can add it to an archive if I'm not catching fish. That way I don't have to redo all the Excel spreadsheet the next time we go to that lake.
Interesting.
You know, you know,
So the Excel spreadsheet, so you have it when you're on the water. How do you use the spreadsheet on your phone?
I'll take a lot of times I'll either take screenshots with my phone,
Uh-huh.
just look at it. I do have the capability to open it up on my phone, but depending on how big of an Excel spreadsheet for that lake, it can kind of be glitchy if you don't have
Okay.
real good service. But I do have it on my phone as well. I can't add anything. It's just like a viewer.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You know,
Because I'm wondering, like, okay, you get all that information, but how do you apply it? So, to actually being on the water on tournament day. So you have that information when you let's go to like day one of the tournament. Now that you have your spreadsheet completed, you have the full picture
yeah.
on your spreadsheet. And you how do you do that? How do you transfer that information to day one on the tournament?
So I'll look at. I like Weather Underground. It's a weather app online. So I'll look at weather data at current. If it like Tennessee River, it's all about do they have the water running? If the dam's flowing, that's dictates the bite out there a lot. So I'll look at current flows, lake elevation, and then I'll decide by my Excel spreadsheet, I'll have one or two or three ramps to pick from, usually by the end of tournament or pre-fishing, and then I'll look and see what kind of weather during pre-fishing we had, kind of wind direction, because wind, I think it has a lot to do with it.
Oh yeah.
And then I'll look at that and I'll decide what area that I've caught fish in and size of fish really dictates where I go on tournament day. On day one, very.
Timothy Joseph has a question. Says during tournament day, do you move different ramps throughout the day?
I do. I'm not a scared, and that's what a lot of people have said about me. I'm not scared to move ramps.
Yeah, like how often have you done it more than once? Like in the tournament, have you moved to multiple? Have moved from where you originally launched to another boat ramp to a third boat ramp?
I've never moved twice. I have to
Okay.
say, normally because um, I stay at one spot until about, depending on what time it is, like 10, 11, and I only have time to move once to another ramp to actually efficiently fish it. I know a lot of people, like you mentioned Jordan Marshall at the beginning of this, he will move like 3 or 4 times, and he does well. But I don't have the confidence to fish an area um, thoughtfully enough to move in like an hour. I have to at least be there for like or like 2 or 3 hours, and I just run out of time mostly.
Interesting. Yeah, I would think like moving like to me, it's like okay, if I'm on the water, like if I'm every time that I'm out of the water, it's lost time. But I mean, I get it. Sometimes you do have to move, and I've seen plenty of anglers. I there's Christine Fish I know, and she's done it a couple of times, and it's worked out great for her. How often do you think it works out for you? Like a percentage out of like 100 times you would have moved from one ramp to another. How many times you would you say it would work on percentage?
It probably works out 70% of the time, to be honest,
Really? Wow.
because the reason why I want to move is there's two reasons. Either one, I'm not catching anything, and if I was to stay there all day, I would just be wasting time. So you can't. So a lot of people won't move because they're scared about wasting that time
Yeah.
moving. But you're already wasting the time sitting there in one spot or one area. You're not catching anything. So I take that 30 minutes to move ramps, that hour. I'm I practice as well, but I can load my kayak up and move in 10 minutes. And that's really the most. I've done it in 5. But so that's number one. You're wasting your time because you're not catching anything. And number two, I have either caught a good limit and I don't want to set at one area and pressure my fish. I much rather move to another rim and catch bonus fish.
Mhm.
Like the Gunnersville tournament, the state championship that I won 2 years ago, I was fishing one area and I actually finished second place in the native no limits 2 weeks prior in the same spot. So I knew there were really good fish there. I had close to 90, I think I had like 90, 93 inches. And I was like, I'm catching 16, 15-inch fish that I might need tomorrow to fill a limit.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and left that area and to load up, move to another ramp just on that off chance that I'll catch a good kicker as a bonus fish.
You have a trailer, right? Like I've seen
I
pictures on
do.
social media. Like I wouldn't even consider it unless I have a trailer.
And
Like
and
I
that
go ahead.
does make a difference. Having the trailer to quickly load it up, because I don't even take my crate out. I take my rods out and I'll run straps. And that's it. I'll leave my motor on, depending on how far I go.
Yeah, yeah. And how bad the roads are going from one point to another, I would bet.
Yes, definitely.
All right, another question for Timothy. Timothy coming with the good questions. Thanks for asking. And again, anybody that's watching, if you have any questions, feel free to put it on the comments. He says, please ask him if he marks where he's seen frogs.
So Timothy is one of my good friends. And I don't know if anybody has TikTok, but if you do, go and follow me on Jett Fishing, and you'll see a video about a year ago of me on Harris Chain Lake. A little inside information: I am terrified of frogs.
Really?
I am. It's a very. Well, I'll tell you the story. I was little. I was probably like 2 years old. My grandmother was putting me in a float in her pool, and there was a big old toad sitting on the float. And I was screaming and kicking, and she just kept putting me in it. And I've been terrified of frogs since. And so he asked if I like look for frogs, and I do, but it don't stop me from fishing. Now I look at them and like, y'all, you stay away, Buster. Stay away.
You're more
But
scared of a frog than a gator or a snake?
nope, nope. As long as I know the snake's there, it don't bother me. But if it like surprises me, I get a little. But if a
Oh, yeah.
frog,
No.
I hate them.
Damn, that's hilarious. I'm
I'll
like
catch
that with roaches, but not.
I'll catch a alligator before I catch a frog. Oh,
I accidentally muted myself. You can hear me now, right?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, um, how much do you attribute your success on the water to all this, you know, nuances that you do before you actually even get on the water for pre-fishing? How
I,
much do you think it's, translating into your success?
I think it translates all, to be honest. I wouldn't put the work into it if it did not. If I did not feel like it helped me. It is a more work than a lot of people, but I feel more confident. Um, I know a lot of people don't like this man, but he does have a very good analogy. Chad Hoover once said in one of his videos that you can have fishing, you have 3 cups. One cup is luck, one cup is preparation for a
Mhm.
tournament, and one cup is um, time on water. So if you are not preparing for a tournament, you put all that water in your luck cup. If you have time on water, if you don't have any time on the water, you put all that water in your luck cup. But if you have a lot of preparation, you can pour a little bit in that cup, in the preparation cup. And if you've been on that lake, you can pour a little bit in that. So I've always liked using that analogy
No, it's
because
really good.
it is. It is a really good, and it really teaches a lot. I've taught some people that, or I've told a lot of people that, and they've all thanked me for telling them that, because it's kind of changed their fishing. Because a lot of people just show up to a tournament, and I used to do that when I was first, like the local trail. But if you're going to fish the national trail, you have to go and pre-fish.
Yeah.
And I try to get 3 days. That's what I try to. 3 days of pre-fishing can tell you a lot. But I have a lot of people that's told me that analogy has helped them a ton. And I think it is the way that I do it. I think it's helped me a lot. I can go in and just be able to efficiently cover water. And, a lot of times the fish are in 10% of the lake. Everybody's heard that terminology. And it's a lot easier to find that little 10% instead of trying to just look at a Google map and not list it down. I honestly don't see how people do it like not listing it all down and keeping up with it.
How many of the top anglers, like the Christine Fishers, Russ Snyders, Drew Gregory's, all bunch of them. Like when you're thinking about those anglers, how much of them do you think actually put that type of preparation into their routine to prepare for a lake?
I've never really talked to any of them about that preparation, just because it's kind of I've always been kind of I wouldn't say secretive, but I don't really like to really let everybody know until today. Yeah. But and really, because I've always thought everybody would think I'm crazy. But I'd almost say a lot of them go in depth in pre-fishing. And really, if you go on YouTube to look up pre-fishing and scouting for a tournament, you don't see very many videos.
No, not at all.
And I think that's what really dictates. One of the things that has helped me in my fishing by so much is not listening to dock talk.
That's true.
I've started, when I first started fishing tournaments, I listened to all of it. And, every angler has their strengths. As it is shaky head, wacky, whatever it is. Everybody has their confidence bait. And you go to a lake and you start listening to all these people talk, and they're like, oh, I'm catching them on a Carolina rig, jerk bait. And you start throwing that Carolina rig and that jerk bait, you can't catch other people's fish. That's true. That's what I say a lot. But if you were to stick with your confidence bait, you will force a bite out of a fish eventually. And so
that's very true.
So that's one reason why I've always, that was probably my biggest. Once I learned that, and then I started doing the Excel spreadsheet, I've done really well in all my tournaments.
That's pretty cool. How much has it jumped from where you were before you did that to where you are now? Like if you would say, hey, before I started doing this, I averaged somewhere around, 20th place. Now I average around 10th place. I'm just making up numbers, but for you, what would you say would you average before that, and how much where do you think you average kind of like around now that you're starting to do that?
I've always I've always had one goal every season, and that was to catch a fish in every tournament. Mm-hmm. And the question that you've asked, it's probably about COVID. Like 2020 was when I started really doing all the spreadsheets and all that, and really trying to get into it seriously. And before then, I might catch a fish, might catch two, but I never would catch limits. And I'd finish mid to bottom of the pack. And then after I've started really trying to do all the pre-fishing, all the scouting, I don't like to brag at all, but I've done really well, top half to top 20s, top 10s in a lot of tournaments. And now I try to catch a limit in every tournament, which for 2025 or the 2025 season, I've only fished one tournament, but I have not caught a limit, so that can kind of go back.
Yeah.
But I didn't free fish at all either. That was on Dale Hollow.
So it's made you more of a consistent angler, you would say.
Yes, it definitely has. And all the talk, and it's kind of controversial. I don't have live scope, so all this talk about live scoping, I feel like using this spreadsheet and covering all these different structures, I can be more efficient fishing against people that are going up to these places than just live scoping.
Hmm.
I just feel like I can be more efficient. I can compete better with the live scopers using this system.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, I think anybody that thinks that just because you got live scope, you're immediately going to start catching fish at or win tournaments at it just doesn't work that way. It's
No,
usually the contrary. I've learned that when I started kayak bass fishing, I had an Ascend 12T, and I mean, the first 10 times out, I didn't catch anything. And then I started catching fish. That was before I even got a fish finder. That's when I started catching fish and I was getting more regular catching fish. And then about a year later, I added the Ray Marine fish finder. And
oh,
then it I stopped catching fish because I was so focused on this new toy that I got that I kind of lost what I found instinctively. Like the stuff
yeah,
that I was started figuring out. Because I think a lot of times there is a lot of things that happen in your subconscious that helps you. Like there are moments where you have an epiphany, right? And you say, all right, this color works in this type of water temperature or in this type of lake, whatever. But I think there's a lot of things that I've never noticed that I picked up on. It just comes naturally. Like it's like exercising, muscle memory.
yeah,
It's and there are times where I think like, what did I learn this year that I progressed this year, for example. I'm just setting an example. I'm not saying literally I progressed this year, but let's say I did better in 2024 than 2023. A lot of times I'll look at it and see like, what is it that I did that it made, and sometimes, yes, there are a couple of things that I can say, oh, because of this lesson that I learned, I caught this and this fish, and that kind of helped my um percentage, I guess, or the amounts of fish that I caught every time I go out. But there's a lot of things that I don't notice that I've learned. I don't know if that makes sense. Like
it does.
it's just kind of like muscle memory. Like now my brain already knows, don't go into this spot, don't use this bait in this situation, without me even actually processing it. It just goes automatically.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I've actually noticed on a different side of my fishing when I started YouTubing, filming
Mm,
for my channel, being able to go back and watch when I catch a fish, and it's amazing the little things that you miss.
yeah.
That you're sitting there, you're reeling in, something happens to your left, and you stop, and you come back, and boom, there's a bite. It's amazing.
Oh, that has happened to me quite a few times. I've learned when I started using a chatterbait. I remember I was in Lake Grapevine and I was not catching anything on with a chatterbait. There was one day I went to Brazos River and man, I had an amazing day with the chatterbait, right? The chatterbait was, the fish were just biting. I probably could have thrown something else and I still would have gotten a bunch of bites. But that day I was showing, throwing the chatterbait and the jackhammer and it was working. I was catching a bunch of fish and a bunch of big fish. Awesome. Then I started, that was on a river, right? So then a couple of weeks later, I go to a Lake Grapevine, which is really hard to fish. And I started throwing a chatterbait and it was not getting the same success. And then I remember like it was yesterday. One thing that I've learned is that I cast it out, the wind had changed direction and it
Yeah,
caused a little bit of a backlash. So I started like cleaning the backlash on my reel. And then as soon as I, you know, got that fixed, I started reeling, I lifted the rod tip and immediately I got a bite. And I was like, oh, it's finally working. Then I went back to doing the same thing like I was doing on the Brazos River. I just kept chugging it and burning it in, chugging it, burning it in. And then I started looking at the videos on my GoPro, and then I was like, what an idiot. Like, like it didn't dawn on me until I watched the video. It's like all this hours of me bomb casting and reeling it in and burning it in was not working. The only time when I worked was when I backlashed and the chatterbait stayed at the bottom. And as soon as I started reeling and it made that jump, that's when it caught. It's like if I would have noticed that, like I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that at that point. But after watching the video, I was like, oh, every now and then just stop it. You know, if it's not working a straight retrieval, work it like a jig, just throw it out there, leave it a couple of seconds, you know, work the tip, reel it, stop it, and then I started getting more bites. So there are, like you mentioned, there are things that you watch and you're like, all right, just had an epiphany moment right here. You know,
Yeah.
oh, this is how I'm supposed to do it, or not always, but you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And since I started filming, I'll actually sit back and watch my videos while I'm pre-fit, like at the night and after getting done pre-fishing, just to see if I've noticed little things that have got me bites. And it's helped me in tournaments as well, just figuring out, because you know every lake's different. Like down in Florida, I was blown away by how slow the fish wanted the chatterbaits, the
Mhm.
swimming worms. They want it very just crawling, almost just you almost can't even feel the blade. And I never really realized that until I watched day one of pre-fishing, and I was sitting there just blazing it back in, burning them. And if I wasn't YouTube or filming for my YouTube channel, I don't think I would have been able to catch fish during the tournament.
That's one thing that I actually want to make a little YouTube video out of this. It's very interesting. So when this has happened to me like a lot of times, right? Especially at the beginning when I started throwing the jackhammer or chatterbait. So started throwing it in, you know, because again, the first time that it worked great was in the Brazos River and it was burning it back up. So I'll go to a lake, my mind just automatically shifts to that mode. Bomb cast it,
Yeah,
burn it back in, bomb cast it, burn it back in. And then there comes a point where you're like maybe tired, and you don't realize it, and all of a sudden after, you know, 2 hours of doing this, you get no bites. All of a sudden, your mind starts running. You start slowing down without noticing. You start
yeah,
slowing down the speed where you're reeling it in. You don't notice it. It just happens because you're tired, right? Your mind
yeah,
is distracted, and then all of a sudden you get a bite. And with the bite, you probably after 2 or 3 hours of not catching anything, your adrenaline starts pumping. You get your fish, it's great fish, blah blah blah. You put it back in the water and you start throwing it back in, and then guess what you're gonna do next? You're gonna bomb cast it and burn it back in.
yeah.
And I've there have been times where I was like, no, no, I have to tone down my adrenaline and realize I caught it because I slowed down without
Yeah.
realizing. Like the fatigue actually worked in my favor
Yeah.
because it slowed me down. So now I have to, like, you know, take it down a notch when you get that adrenaline pump.
Yeah.
There, I'm sure you've experienced this where you're on a
Oh,
lake and you're in a tournament. It's the 6 hour. You only got 2 or 3 bites, and then you're like, it's only 2 hours to go. I'm done. I'm tired. I didn't sleep at all last night because for whatever reason you're excited about the tournament, and all of a sudden you get this bite, and it's like somebody injected adrenaline through your veins. Like, it's all of a sudden all your tiredness, all your like I've literally been on my kayak where I actually doze off for like 2 or 3 minutes. Like I really back in, I I lay down on my seat and all of a sudden I just fall asleep for like 5 minutes. That's how tired I am. But as soon as you get that bite, it's miraculously, it's like, man, that's like the biggest chunk of adrenaline that I've
yeah.
shot of adrenaline that I've ever had. So it's that thing that keeps you going and going, but sometimes you just have to learn how to tone it down and harness it and remember how he said that you got that bite.
I completely agree. I don't think there's any drug, which I've never done any drugs. I am a straight shooter. I don't think there's any drugs in this world that could give you that much that feeling of either
Yeah.
catching a big fish or shooting a big buck. It's just it's awesome. But you'll end up catching a fish because you slow down, and then it takes you 2 more hours to catch another fish because you got to slow back down after you.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Timothy again has a question. Thank you for your question, Timothy. Says, can you ask Ethan if he cuts his hook prior to avoid soil lip in the fish? I've heard anglers that are kind of like put a little piece of soft plastic in the hook, like or they're Texas rig it, but like bury the hook in the soft plastic so they won't set the hook on a big fish. Do you do that?
I will do it, but it's on a very specific reason. So if I have 3 days to pre-fish, I'll fish. So most tournaments are Saturday and Sunday. So I'll get there on Wednesday. I'll catch fish Wednesday. Thursday I'll try to not catch as many fish, and then on Friday I'll cut my tips and my hooks off where I won't where I won't hang into any fish. Just because if you're going to catch a fish on Friday, you're probably not going to catch them on Saturday. Maybe probably not. I've always heard it takes 3 days for a fish to want to eat again. Now I don't know if that's true or not. That's from a couple of my older uncles that have been fishing for 50 plus years. So all those old folk or wise tales. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I've always heard. And
I,
try not to.
I don't think it's. I mean, we've had tournaments, those 2 day tournaments where people get their second day fish DQ'd, not because they did anything shady, but just
Yeah,
because they caught the same fish that they did
yeah,
last week. And it's not just bed fishing. Like that happens a lot in bed fishing, right? At
yeah,
that point, they're just defending. Like I've caught not for pre-fishing a tournament or a tournament just for fun. I went to a lake and I was trying to catch the female. One thing that I've learned, somebody told me this, and I thought that was an old man's tale, but I actually got to see it in person, and I was like, oh man, that is something. That so when you have there's certain stage of the spawning, right? Usually when the female had already dropped her eggs, that the female is not gonna leave, is not gonna bite anything that you throw into that bed, right? So
yeah.
what she does is she'll antagonize the male to come pick it up and
Yeah.
then take it. And I some people told me that I'm like, really? I'm like, why? And it's like, no. And I saw it for the first time. I was fishing a lake with a lot of clear water, and there was this humongous female. I mean, it had to be, I don't know how many pounds. It probably was a little skinny because she already dropped her eggs, but she must have been 24, 25 inches. I mean, that was a massive female. And I kept throwing the soft plastic, and she would leave, and all of a sudden you see the male, smaller male, come and take the bait, and it happened like 5 times. Like
Wow.
she would never bite. She would always go to the male, and you can see. I mean, the water clarity was like 20 feet. You can see her go, just swim over to the male. The male will come in, pick up the soft plastic, and I'm like, God, why can't she just pick it up? So turns out that was true, and it was cool to watch it. But I was like, son of a gun, I've never even seen that before. So point to that is yes, fish will, I mean, even on the same in the same hour, I've caught the same fish 3 times. Again, that was bed fishing. But I mean, there's gotta be fish that do I mean, if you set the hook really hard on them, maybe it'll, cause this type of trauma that they will be like, I'm getting out of here, move
Yeah.
to another spot or not bite again for like 2 or 3 days, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was just an old wise tale that they've always told me. But one of the big patterns, definitely on Chickamauga, is to go and fish boat ramps that a lot of tournaments launch out of, and you catch those retreads.
Yeah.
So I knew it couldn't be all the way true, but I guess it probably depends on how old the fish is, if it's been caught a lot.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point. Daniel Perry says, I've always have to tell myself, slow down first thing in the morning when I'm all jacked up. That's true. Walter Hansen says the same thing. Same here, Dan. I actually um have a little bit of ADHD, so I it's hard for me to focus on anything. And I got a prescription for Adderall. I don't use it all the time. I don't like using it. I sometimes do it for work because I have to focus on what I'm doing. In my tight line of work, the devil's in the details, especially when you're
Yeah.
writing a report. But I've actually done it for like tournaments where, especially because it's like a shot of caffeine, right? Like if I drink my Adderall, I cannot have coffee that morning. If
Wow.
I do both things, my heart is going to jump out of my chest. So usually, if I have the tournament, I'll drink my Adderall in the morning on my way to the boat ramp, and then not drink coffee until after the tournament. But man, those things like I don't know if any. Have you ever had Adderall?
No, I'm not.
Dude, that is crazy. It's like that movie. What is that movie with forgot the name of it. I'm horrible with names. But it was like this, it was Robert De Niro and Bradley Cooper, I think it is.
Oh,
There's this miracle drug that gets you all your senses. Um, dude, I felt like something like that. I was like, man, it's crazy how active I am. I'll be at the boat ramp, probably be insufferable. Like I'll be talking, chatting with everybody. So where you going? What are you fishing? Blah blah blah. blah. I was like,
I know
golly,
you had a
these
buddy that.
Admirals got me going. But I mean, I remember one time Possum Kingdom, um, the that day, the 2 day one. I took that Adderall and I was in the boat ramp with oh my god, Matthew Scott. Matthew Scott was probably like, what is Armando on? Because I was like super hyper. We got on the water and I was literally paddling so hard that I was right. He had an NK 180. That was before the Pro came out. And I was like right there with him, going like 3 or 4 miles per hour, like bam, bam, and I felt like nothing. It's crazy. Limitless. That's the movie
You
that
probably
says Limitless.
focus. Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably crash really hard once it gets
No,
off.
I actually I don't. I actually it eases all the way to the like it'll last me 8 hours,
Oh wow.
easily 8 or 10 hours. Like I
Yeah.
can have to drink it really early in the morning. Like if I have it like at 12 noon, I won't sleep that night until like 2 a.m.
Thank God.
But it'll keep me stable. I don't crash at all. That's what I love about it. It just keeps me
Yeah.
stable and it really keeps me focused. It's funny because when I started using it for work, like I would have to drive to an inspection for like an hour, and I would take it in the morning, and I would actually drive slower,
Yeah.
but more focused, like more efficient. It was funny. It's not that it wasn't like that rush where you're like, oh, I have to go, I have to go. It's not like a monster energy drink. It's more like your mind is so awake, but at the same time, you're not going faster. You're just being more efficient in your thought process
Yeah.
and therefore losing less time,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. You could probably market that for a fishing enhancement drug.
I don't, yeah, right? Like
Make
I've
a lot of
literally
money.
seen the difference of me just kind of like, it's not that I'm going to catch, it's not that it helps me catch fish literally. I think what it does, it's kind of streamline your process. It clears out the noise. I don't know if you've seen there used to be a popular reel that will go around as somebody you hear all this background noises and all of a sudden the guy casts a line and all of a sudden everything goes shh.
Yeah.
It's like that. Like in my mind, my HDHD brain will be like, if I'm driving, I'm thinking of this, thinking of that, blah, 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 doing this, doing that, and all those things running in my head. Whereas if I once I take that, it's all of a sudden it's the only thing on my mind is what I'm doing. Or my focus is like, for example, in this case, fishing. If I'm working, then it's whatever my work is. So all those little invasive thoughts that come into my mind about did I leave the stove on, did whatever, I forgot to do this, I got to pick up the dry cleaning, blah blah blah, I
Yeah.
forgot to tell my wife this. All those thoughts all of a sudden are just gone. It's just like the mission and that's it. And it's not that for me, it's not that it makes me go faster by way of injecting energy. It's just that my mind is not distracted. So therefore,
Yeah.
everything's streamlined.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does. And to kind of loop it back into our discussion, that's what my Excel spreadsheet does. Is
yeah, I'll
it
probably have to drink one of those to read your
with
your
all that
spreadsheet.
with all that information, I drain it, I pull it down, focus it into my spreadsheet, and I can be very efficient at pre-fishing and scouting with that. So it's kind of funny you brought that up. And
So what have I missed? Like you know more about this. I'm like asking questions, but I don't know if I'm asking the right question because I have very little knowledge on what is it that you do. I didn't know this was gonna be like that deep into like when we were talking about this. I was like, yeah, he pre-fishes, he looks for spots, okay, But once we started talking, even on the show, I was like, oh no, this goes deep. So, what questions I should be asking about this? So, what information am I missing that you want to share?
I don't know. I think you've really kind of hit it on the head for the most part. I could sit here for days probably and talk and blah blah blah. I can get carried away. If anybody watching my YouTube channel, they know I can go go off on a rampage. But far as what you already asked and what other people have asked, it's it's basically what all I do during a tournament, during pre-fishing, getting prepared. The only thing that I've not talked about, which is not really kind of in this, not really, I guess it would not be in line with this kind of topic, would just be gear preparation, like getting rod and reels rigged up and blah and stuff like that. But that's
We
just
can go down that you're definitely coming back. So we can go touch on that on
yeah.
another episode because we've gone for a while. So we're about wrapping it up. If there's anybody on the comment section that has one or two more questions about this pre-fishing and scouting, uh, feel free to put it on the comments. For now, Ethan, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast
Yeah.
on the live show. What was the other thing I was going to ask? Oh, weather prep too, like Timothy is asking. Does the weather preparation kind of works itself into the Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah, it does. I've said, and this kind of draws back to my hunting history as well.
Oh, I
Getting
just remember questions. Yes, go ahead.
do what?
No, I just remember I have one question about that, but go ahead.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
going back to the like the biometric pressure, wind direction, temperature, water temperature, um, all that goes into my spreadsheet to just better kind of try to I was really the reason why I started doing all that was to try to understand fishing in itself, like what makes a bass bite, and just to be able to be more kind of like just to learn more about fish biology and deer hunting, learn more about whitetail biology. And so that's really the reason why I started it, all the weather stuff.
So
Just
that was my question that I wanted to ask. Have you seen anything in how in your research and uploading all this to your spreadsheet? I've used the word spreadsheet more than I've ever done in my previous 50 years of life, by the way.
this
Not
is a
even in
5 inch.
college did I use that word so much. But um have you seen anything that deer and bucks behave that bass kind of do the same thing? Like, is anything relatable from bass behavior to deer behavior?
It's kind of funny. There is
Really?
the biometric pressure. So the bigger bucks, they like to move when the wind's blowing really high, like 10, 15 plus mile per hour winds, and the biometric pressure is either really high or really low. The big bass that I've caught have all been almost the same with the biometric pressure, either being one severe or one like either really high or really low. Now, I don't know if that's just coincidence, and I've not caught anything huge by no means. My biggest fish is 22 and a half. That was at Chickamauga. It was like 8 pounds of 2 ounces. So I don't have that much data on really big fish, like probably like your personal best, probably 10 plus since you live in Texas.
But I'm not that good. No, my biggest one is 22 and 3/4. No,
Wow.
actually, my biggest one I estimated at 24 inches, but it was bank fishing before I even got a kayak, and it was a post spawn female, early summer, and that thing must have been like 24 inches. I have a picture on it on Instagram. It was biggest fish I've ever seen, but
Wow.
I didn't I didn't measure it, but I'm pretty sure it's
I'll
with
have
the
to
24 inches range.
You can actually take a iPhone. If you have an iPhone, you can measure with a phone.
Really?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you can go in. I think one of the depending on what iPhone you have, like the newer ones, you can have a measuring stick on your phone. Now, don't
Mm.
quote me. I've seen it work. I don't know if it can work on pictures.
It's like a 6-year-old picture. The thing, I'm not even kidding. The thing was so big. Um, I I couldn't, like, as much as I stretched my arm to take a picture, like I couldn't get it to fit in the frame.
That's always a good one.
Yeah. So that's why I think it's like 24. But again, that's unofficially. But no, actually, every time I caught a big fish, man, usually it's like paper thin. Like
Yeah,
I think I've never weighted a fish. I don't have a weight scale. I'm assuming I'm gonna say 7 pounds is the heaviest I caught. Uh it was probably the one I caught in Fairfield. I caught actually that fish twice, 1 year apart. It's funny, same spot. It's
that's all.
hilarious. I caught it one time. I caught it one out of the bass boat. The other time I caught it one out of the kayak. It's, it's hilarious. Like it was the exact same fish.
Wow.
And that one of the first time I caught it was probably the heaviest it was. It was heavier than the second time I caught it. And it was, I'm gonna say maybe it was it, but I'm gonna say 7 pounds, maybe a
Wow.
little bit more.
That is a skinny one.
Yeah, no, it was huge. It's actually on the, I got it on the reel. I'll send you the reel at one point.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, anyways, Timothy says that's a huge fish. It was. If you go to Instagram, it's probably like one of the earliest photos I've ever posted on my Instagram account of Bass Kayak and Beers. I had, like, if you see it, if you go search all the way back, it's the one that I'm wearing like a soccer jersey, like it's yellow and and red
Oh,
jersey from Barcelona, like their roads uniform when they're on the road. So it's you'll see it. It's a huge bass.
yeah. So that's a good kayak bass. It's not real hefty, but it's got the length.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was. I didn't even have a kayak back then. It was drop shotting. And it was I spent like 4 hours and I was just about to pack it in, and then I felt the bite and I thought I was snagged. It didn't even put up a fight. Like it was so worn out, it didn't even put up a fight. I just had thought I had a log in it until it came out. I was like, oh my God. Anyways, so Ethan, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I did want to give you a couple of minutes to, plug your social media and any sponsors. So go right ahead.
Yeah. So my YouTube channel is Jett's Fishing Adventures. I try to upload weekly. You know how life gets in the way sometimes, but I
Yeah.
do a lot of informative videos. I do a lot of tournaments. A couple of my big sponsors would be Dugout Bait and Tackle. They help me a lot. Hobie Fishing. I know Amando has done a little reel about hitting that log, or I guess you hit a tree. A couple of
I hit a hole. It wasn't. I hit a three that was like
yeah,
50 feet out of the water.
and I tell you, take a lick and keep on ticking. I know a lot of people always complain about them being real fragile, but I tell you, I put mine through the ringer. I got a 2023 Hobie Ike 360 14, and that Joker is it can take some damage. But
Yeah.
their sponsors, Seaguar, they make sure I can actually catch. You know, you can have the most expensive rods and reels in the world, but if your line is trash, you're not catching that fish. Torn Outdoors, they make some great baits. They're kind of local to Tennessee. They have a website, so if you want to get some baits that, if you're from away from Tennessee that your fish have not seen, look up Torn Outdoors. Thunder Rocket Lures, they got some really innovative Alabama rigs and some really cool looking buzz baits and um, spinner baits. And then Bad Boy Jigs, you can't go wrong with a Bad Boy Jig. They The head on them goes through timber, grass really well. And I actually just have a new sponsor that I've not even talked about on my main channel and Facebook yet, but Backdraft Lures. They make a lot of terminal tackle, and they also make some jigs as well. But I use all their buzz baits and wobble heads. But for our sponsors, that's about it.
And on your YouTube channel or on your social media, have you ever made a video about what we just talked about today?
I have not. I've actually been
Really?
wanting to do it. I just have not figured out a good way to, well, to be completely honest, I've not figured out a way to show people what I do and not give away all my secret spots.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it might get a lot of views, but
Yeah.
at
And
what
that's the
cost?
only bad thing about filming for my YouTube channel. And anybody that films YouTube will understand it's really hard to keep a spot secret
Yeah.
when you got a camera behind you.
I've experienced that with the best tournament I've had, not necessarily where I place, but that I feel good, that I
Yeah.
feel like I did the best, even though it wasn't the best that I placed on. Was Lake Cotto for the Texas Texas actually Bassmaster the not the Texas, the Bassmaster Kayak Series, the National Trail last year. And I'm not gonna say it's a banger video because I don't, I'm not great at editing, but I mean, I had a ton of catch and some good footage. And I've always like, I should make a video about this. I'm like, there's always gonna be a tournament at Cado, and I do not want to put. I was like, man, it would be good, but nope, no, thank you. I'm not posting anything on that tournament.
I know the only thing I regret most about my YouTube channel is I did not film when I won the state championship 2 years ago, and I regret it because I wanted to be able to look back and relive that experience. But I am kind of glad that I did not go and spoil a really good spot
Yeah,
because I've won the state championship there. 2 weeks before I won there, I got second place at the Native No Limits. And then 2 weeks after that, one of my buddies won, I think it was the KBF championship out of that same spot. Me and him found it pre-fishing for the native tournament. And I know a few of the other big name kayakers fish out of there, out of that area as well. I don't want to give away any of their names. That way I don't give away the spot. But it's a pretty decent spot, or it used to be until we've been catching them out of there. Now it's being, the last time I went out there, it was, you could tell it was pressured. I
yeah,
guess somehow the word got out.
yeah. That's the other thing. Even if you post it, like, there's always gonna be somebody that's gonna be upset
Yeah.
because that's the same spot they fished in or whatever. So, but Timothy Joseph said, "Thank you for a great podcast this evening. Y'all take care. Thank you so much for your support. Everybody else that's been in the chat, Cameron, Daniel, Walter, and everybody that's watching, thank you so much for your questions. Lawrence as well, Andrew. Appreciate you joining the podcast. Thank you so much, Ethan, for joining the podcast. And for those that are new to to this podcast, as a reminder, we do have a live show every Thursdays. Um, and on Wednesdays, we air the Advanced Kayak Angler on our podcast streaming platform where you can listen to Kurt Smith. He always has a tournament angler to talk about a specific bait, technique, seasonal fishing, and a bunch of great tips on how to become a better angler. That's every Wednesday on every podcast streaming platform. And of course, this live show will also be uploaded every Monday onto the podcast streaming platform, Bass Kayak and Beers. You can check out us. You can check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram under Bass Kayak and Beers. Thank you so much for watching. If you're going to be on the water, please wear your PFDs and have a great night, everyone. Peace out.
See y'all.
in